Diversity and inclusion is hugely important to our whole engineering industry. That's why I'm happy to share a lot of how we do things within our industry. Because if we don't, we're going to be taken out by businesses from a disruption point of view. We all know what's happened to Blockbuster, we all know what's happened to Kodak. They were taken out by businesses which they didn't see in there as competitors. So for us, we need to be looking at what's the disruption within our industry, what's going to come in and disrupt the engineering industry. And part of that is within that diversity and inclusion space. If we don't have that as our focus, we're going to be taken out by the likes of Google. Google are going to come in one day and say, we can do what our engineers are doing. Google have a diverse and inclusive culture. So do some of the other large tech companies. So if our engineering organisations aren't aware of what's happening in the digital space, and we aren't being aware of industries outside of our space, then we're going to be taken out. So it's important to us to make sure we stay on top of changes and what we need to be doing. Technology's got a huge potential impact on our engineering space. Digital change within our industry is rapidly changing how we do things. A lot of my competitors and my counterparts may say that's never going to happen. But you just have to look at what's happened with Blockbuster, what's happened with Kodak. They never saw what was coming. It was a slow creep and it came and has taken them out. So for us as an industry, we need to be looking at what is our Kodak, what is going to change us. It is going to be a slow creep and we may say it's never going to change, but things do change and it may change quicker than a lot of us think. So if we're not changing from a diversity and inclusion perspective, what we're doing with our people, how we're promoting, how we're engaging with future generations, then we are on a losing battle. So it's hugely critical that we do stay in contact with what we need to do as an industry and make those changes. I think some of it is still the ingrained male culture and set mindset, fixed mindsets. We see it a lot within our industry, the fixed mindsets and fixed ways that things are done. And so I think that by having those fixed mindsets, we're not being open to how things could be. We don't have that growth mindset where people are thinking about what could things be, how could it be if we changed this or did things differently. And so women, I think, who are the minority in the engineering space, see that fixed mindset and get put off going forward and staying within those leadership roles. If we can create an environment where people do see there's a growth mindset and do see there is opportunity for change, then that's going to attract and retain people within an organisation. Whether it's female or people from other minority parts of our industry, then that's key for all of us to retain people who aren't like the majority and do have a different mindset. At the end of the day, it comes down to that difference of thought into how we do things, which then brings that creativity and innovation into our day-to-day life. We do need to get our girls and younger generations involved within those STEM subjects. I know we've been running the Week of Engineering over the last few years and I've championed that for Engineering New Zealand up in Auckland, and it's been critical to help engage the younger generation coming through. The Wonder Project also, which is one of the other initiatives which Engineering New Zealand is running, is critical for getting females and our younger generation interested in those STEM subjects. If we don't have people going through and doing science, math in their younger years, then we aren't going to get them coming through to the engineering within the universities. How we do that, that's a huge challenge I think for all of us, and it's an industry challenge which we need to be working on. Because if we aren't making sure our pipeline of graduates coming through is rich in terms of diversity and inclusion and diversity of race, religion and gender, then we aren't going to get a good outcome in terms of the people we have. Yeah, having role models is critical. I know talking to our younger staff, they see role models as one of their key lightning points that they look for. They want to be seeing other people who look like them, sound like them in those leadership roles. And so from a gender perspective, race perspective, if we don't have those role models in those senior positions, then we don't have the people they can look up to and want to be like. So critical to have those people in those roles. That's why we've gone down the path of making sure we've got a diverse mix within our director group. I have, and for me personally, it's sort of opened my eyes to having a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. So saying, what do we need to be doing differently and how do we achieve that? And looking at doing that through a different lens. And often that is overlaid well if you put it through a diversity and inclusion lens. Making decisions based on not necessarily what's right for me, but what's right for the overall organisation. And if everyone is having a win out of our decision-making process, then that's good for the business. Get with the program. It's the way of the future. If you look at our millennials coming through, the ones that we're recruiting, they see diversity and inclusion as part of who they are and what their future looks like. Out in social media at the moment, diversity and inclusion is a core part of all discussions going on. And from having a bigger purpose in life, having a diverse and inclusive culture is important for all business. So any businesses who aren't getting on board with having a diverse and inclusive culture really need to think about where they're going and what they're going to be in the next few years' time. Some of the tips probably are looking at your recruitment policies. What can you be doing differently from a recruitment policy perspective? How are you conducting interviews? Do you have a diverse panel of interviewers? Other areas can be looking at your senior leadership and how you bring in a diversity of thought into that senior leadership. Do you do it by bringing in independent directors, or can you bring in independent advisors if you're not wanting to take on independent directors? But being able to bring in that diversity of thought into your senior leadership to help change some of the ingrained practices that some people do have and unconscious biases which people have. It's a long road to actually getting that change, and it does need to be led from the top. If your senior management and your CEO, managing director aren't bought into it, then you've got a massive battle on your hands. It was a no-brainer. We were already down the path in terms of diversity and inclusion. We'd already started up our diversity group within Harrison Grierson, so we saw it as the next step for an industry-wide perspective. We're on our own journey at Harrison Grierson, and we see the importance of making sure that our whole industry is taken along. At the end of the day, Harrison Grierson has a purpose of shaping the world into a better place. We're doing that one step at a time with our own business, but for me the diversity agenda is the next step in terms of shaping the whole industry into a better place.